Okay, so something huge, something absolutely historic is unfolding right now within one of the world's biggest Christian families, the Anglican Communion. You know, for years, even decades, these tensions have been building under the surface. But now, after a landmark conference in Africa, what many are calling a total reordering of the faith has become official.
And this was the headline, right? The future has arrived. That was the powerful declaration that came out of the conference in Abuja, Nigeria. And you got to understand, this wasn't some hopeful prediction. For the hundreds of leaders who gathered there, this was a statement of fact. A new era wasn't just on the horizon, it was here, right now.
And this wasn't some small fringe meeting, not at all. We're talking about 468 bishops, clergy, and lay leaders. And they came from 27 different provinces all around the globe. They weren't there just to talk and have coffee. No, they were there to launch a new structure, a whole new direction for millions and millions of Anglicans worldwide.
So how did we get here? What drove this really dramatic moment? Well, after simmering for more than 20 years, the whole conflict really boils down to one single question. What does it actually mean to be a communion? And it turns out there are two fundamentally different answers to that question. Let's break them down.
The entire debate, everything, hangs on this one distinction. On one side, you have the institutional view. This says unity comes from a shared history, from those historic ties to the Archbishop of Canterbury. But on the other side, you've got the confessional view, and this one says, no, real unity isn't based on an institution or a person. It's based on a shared, binding confession of faith, with ultimate authority flowing directly from the Bible.
And they spelled it out really clearly in their official statement, the Abuja Affirmation. This quote just gets right to the heart of it. They're basically saying, look, we're not trying to create a rival communion. What we're saying is that there are two totally incompatible ideas of what a communion even is. For them, the original model was always confessional, and they believe they're simply getting back to their roots.
So why did they feel like this was their only option? Well, according to their statement, the old leadership structures, what they call the Canterbury Instruments, had completely failed them. They argue these groups compromised the Bible's authority by letting what they see as false teaching, especially around issues of marriage and sexuality, just spread, all under this idea of good disagreement.
Now, if you're going to build a new kind of communion, one based on shared belief, well, you need a constitution, right? A foundational text that everyone agrees on. For this new Global Anglican Communion, that document is called the Jerusalem Declaration. This declaration actually isn't brand new. It was written way back in 2008. But what's happened now is that it's been elevated to become the absolute central non-negotiable confession of faith. If you want to be part of this reordered community, you have to agree to these 14 points. It's the new bedrock.
So what's actually in this thing? Well, some people might call these the boring parts, but honestly, this is the engine room of the whole movement. This is what it's all about. It establishes the Bible as God's word written, the final authority on everything, and it anchors their faith in these historic Reformation documents, like the 39 Articles and the 1662 Book of Common Prayer. For them, this isn't some new invention. It's about restoring what was already there.
Okay, so they've got their theology sorted out. But who's in charge? How is this new body actually going to be governed? This is where we see a really deliberate pivot away from the old, top-down models and toward a whole new structure of shared authority.
The change in how they're governed is a super clear two-step process. First, out with the old. The GAFCON Primates Council, which was just made up of the top archbishops, has been totally dissolved. And in its place, they've created a new, much more representative body called the Global Anglican Council. And this is a huge deal, philosophically speaking. Power is being shared on purpose. This new council isn't just a club for archbishops. It includes bishops, priests, and, this is crucial, lay people. And everyone gets a full vote. They call it a conciliar structure, and it's a very intentional move to spread authority much more widely.
You know, a lot of people watching this expected them to elect one single leader, first among equals, basically, to be a direct rival to the Archbishop of Canterbury. But in a pretty surprising move, they totally scrapped that plan. The council said that if they're really serious about moving past the old structures, they have to leave behind the old titles, too. So instead of that one big figurehead, they elected a leadership team to guide the council. Archbishop Laurent Mbanda of Rwanda is the new chairman, and he's supported by a vice chairman and a general secretary. They'll be at the helm until the next big assembly, which is scheduled for 2028. So they've got a new constitution and a new government.
What are the immediate, practical results of all this? Well, it all comes down to one key policy, and it's called principal disengagement. And let's be clear, this isn't just a friendly suggestion. It is a hard and fast requirement for anyone who holds a leadership position in this new Global Anglican Council. It basically mandates a clean, total break from all the institutions historically tied to Canterbury.
The rules of the road here are incredibly specific. Leaders must not attend the big institutional meetings, like the huge, once-a-decade Lambeth Conference that the Archbishop of Canterbury hosts. They have to cut off all funding to the official Anglican Communion office, and they must refuse any financial help from churches they believe have compromised their doctrine. This is what makes the separation very, very real.
Which, of course, leaves us with the big question. Is this a reordering of a global faith, as its supporters claim? A kind of restoration project getting back to basics? Or is it the beginning of a permanent, messy fracture? The one thing that seems undeniable is that after decades of debate, the future has well and truly arrived, and it's going to reshape a global faith for generations to come.